All right, so today we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to talk about curves and surfaces. So first things first, curves are basically lines like in Illustrator, and there's different types of lines. So you can have a curve that's a cylinder, something like that. You can have something that's square and something like that. And you can even go in and create other types. So they have an EP curve, which is basically creating curves like this, and each curve basically creates a kind of flowing, smooth way to do it. If you want to end it, you hit right click complete tool. They have, I prefer more, is the Bezier curve tool, which is a simple corner, 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 or corner curve, and I can control these curves. So these are all options for you to kind of work with, right? And again, complete tool. Now, so when you're working with this stuff, a lot of times this can be used for animation or it can be used for modeling and things like that. And so we're going to do some simple things today to create some basic straightforward objects. Now, you could do this as trim for your office. You can do this for a number of different things to do. What we're going to do is we're going to create something simple like a book. So I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to go here into the front mode. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click the Bezier curve, and I'm going to start out very simple. So the big thing with curves is you can't close them manually. You have to start and end in a location where you're willing to put geometry between. So for that matter, I'm just going to go click here, click there, click here, click all the way over here. I'm going to click this, click this, click this, and I'm doing something kind of similar on both sides here, like so, something like that. And it's a little bit off, but we can always go in and edit. And then when I'm done, I can complete the tool. Now, if I want this, I always do it this way because it's easier than kind of controlling things. Going into control vertices and grabbing a curve, and I can move it and then turn it into a Bezier curve with it as I grab this. So you can see here, I can quickly grab some of these. Now, if you're grabbing the points, you're creating a Bezier curve to kind of create that softness and kind of create kind of that smoothness again. So I can go control vertex here and kind of shift right click, and I can convert this to a corner, a Bezier, or a Bezier corner. And so if I choose a Bezier corner, I can then go in, and here's my Bezier corner. I can grab that and start moving that out. So I have a lot of control options with this. Again, but more, it's basically going back and forth and kind of playing with things. But I'm going to object mode here again, and I'm just going to go control, and I'm going to kind of even these out a little bit and kind of move them. So once I get them in the spots that I want, then what I'm going to do is go to object mode here, and I'm going to go out of this mode here, and I'm going to go back into this mode so you can see kind of my book here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the curves panel and close that curve. So there lies kind of that end curve, right? So with that, then what I'm going to do is click off of that, and I'm going to create another Bezier corner from here to, we'll say about here, right? And then again, complete that tool. Now, once I have something I can use, now I can create a sweep mesh here and quick sweep mesh. Now that gives me a mesh. Now with that, I can do some adjustments. So if I want, I can make some cables, and I can do that simply by the profiles, and I can control the curves. I can have, more and more mesh like this, and you'll see that there's a little kind of flip over here. It's kind of a weird geometry, and that's probably because my mesh is flipping around. If it causes some problems, I'm not too worried about it right now, but we can definitely go around and kind of delete that or kind of play around with it. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to custom mesh here, and I'm going to select my original book. And so as you see, once I select my original book, now what happens is I have a basic shape of a book. I'm going to say OK first. And then now if I want, I can click this shape here. Sorry, this object. Let me just move that over here. And if I want to change things, so I can actually go into object mode here, and I'm sorry, I can go to control mode here, and I can manipulate and control these edges. So you can see here, it's controlling the edges accordingly. Now, this is flipping around, and if that's the case, if this flips around, we can try something else where I go to object mode here and grab this, and I can try going into the curved surfaces and reversing the direction. That might flip it around too and give you a better kind of process, if that makes sense. So this is just one thing, and I'm not too worried about it. But when I select this, I can always go back into the sweep mesh here and basically control some different things. So one of the things I can control is I can say, okay, we're going to do precision, and I'm going to control this. And you can see basically what's happening is it's flipping this one side to the other side. Or I can go into start to end and do something along this lines and control the backspace. So you notice here, when I move it down to one step, what happens is I flip it around. Most likely that's because when I created it, I went counterclockwise when I should have gone clockwise. And that's, again, not that big of a deal. So as you can see, once I've got this, I can pretty much manipulate the mesh or whatever I need. Plus, it also turns into, an object. So if I go to object mode here, and I'm going to just go to mesh display, and I'm going to hit reverse, you'll see that it flips around my normals, right? So what I've done here is I've created a really quick sweep profile of a book. Now I can do this in Polygon, and there's other things that I can do. I can basically create this mesh for example, I can create it for railings, I can create it for cables, and I can create it for a number of different things. So, but with this idea, what I can do is now I can grab this and I can go into edge mode or face mode or any other mode and kind of adjust it. So it's already a polygon, and I can build on top of this. So for example, if I shift right click, you'll notice I have all my tools back. So if I go here and say, let's go here and add a edge loop in here, and I'm going to add an edge loop in there, and then I'm going to go over here, and we've got all this geometry here. Let's add another, there's an edge loop in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this edge here, and I'm just going to move it up to center, and I'm going to start kind of adding some of this stuff together. So first things first, let's start simple. I'm going to grab this edge here and that edge there, and I'm going to bridge. And I'm going to do the same thing here and here. So I'm just hitting the B key here, and I'm going to actually clean up this edge here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to control backspace, and I'm going to control backspace. That way I can control my geometry a little bit more. But I'm going to grab this one here and that one there, and go back to bridge. Let's do the same thing here. So now I've got kind of this book, and then what I'm going to do is grab some of this here, and let's go into shift right click and multi-cut, and I'm going to start adding some geometry in here just so that I can get some basics in there, right? And so now with that in there, then I can grab this one and this one here and shift right click and again bridge. Grab this and do the same thing. And then with that, what I can do is start grabbing. So I'm going to grab these two here, and I'm just going to scale that down a little bit. So that gives me kind of the rough idea. Same thing over here. And I'm going to grab this here, and I'm just going to move it a little bit off to the center. Same thing this, like this, right? And so with that idea now, then I can go in and grab these as a bridge. And I'm just going to rinse and repeat. And I have got a face of a book. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply go into my face mode, and I'm actually going to grab that, and I'm going to simply extrude that out just a hair, and so you can see that looks pretty good for a bookend. Now I can do the same thing to the other side if I want, or I can go into object mode here, or so let's go into vertice mode. I'm going to just grab this and move it about halfway down and go back into object mode, and then I'm going to edit and then duplicate special, and I'm going to click on this here. So my duplicate special, I'm going to make sure I'm in object mode before I kind of mess too many things up. So I'm going to go duplicate special, and the big thing I'm going to do is I'm going to face it in the opposite direction as here. So it's XYZ. So if I go 1, 1, -1 in scale, and I'm going to go copy and say apply, it's going to flip it around like that. Okay, so there lies my opposite end of the book, and what I can do then is grab both of these, go edit, mesh, combine. Now it's one object, and basically it's back and forth. Okay, so now what I can do is I can either grab both of these objects and bridge, or we can go in and we can grab all the verts. So I'm going to grab all the verts here, and I'm going to go into merge to center, and I'm going to merge vertices. And we played with this a little bit before. My big concern is down here, so I'm just going to look. So let's move that kind of like this and hit apply, and you'll notice nothing happens. So I'm just going to move it a little bit further, hit apply, and there we go. Now make sure nothing really collapsed on you and you still have the geometry you're looking for. That looks good. I'm going to go to object mode, or sorry, edge mode, and I'm going to just double click and control backspace because I don't need it. It's mesh that I don't need at all. So now you have a book, right? Now, this is something I've kind of alluded to the last couple of weeks, is basically unwrapping. And the thing about unwrapping is, you know, I've talked about direction of faces. I've talked about the direction of different objects. I've talked about a lot of different things, but I've never really fully unwrapped anything. And that's okay because it's a lot of information, and you're starting out, so you need to know this stuff and what it does. So a little bit is good. Now we're going to finally unwrap something. So to unwrap something, you have to finally make something that is useful for a game engine, useful for ArcViz, useful for anything else. And that's basically being able to put an image to a material and allowing that material to basically work. So in this case, I have a simple object here. I can optimize this further by doing a lot of different things. One of the things that I can do is like this outer edge here. I don't need that. The inner edge is fine, but the outer edge, I can simply go in here and go into my vertices, and I can control merge and go target weld, and I can grab like this here, that there, and I would do the same thing for this corner. So I'm going to move these here, and I can do this in all kind of areas of my construction, right? So I can even move this up here, and I can continue on and do this, and I will. So I'm going to just kind of clean this up, and because it's low poly, we're going to keep it low poly. And so you can see here, and I probably should have done this in all reality before I did this, before I mirrored it. It would have saved me some time, but you can see here that looks clean. These, I want that little edge. I'll show you why in a second here. And then over here, we're just going to kind of do the same thing. I'm just speeding up this section so that we can get this done faster and basically. Okay, so now these are all, this is an optimized mesh. It's geometry, like it's all good. And this is where the low poly, like this is where unwrapping comes in. So the first thing you need to know about unwrapping is that what you need to do is you need to put it in islands. So when we go edit to unwrap here, you're going to notice that there's nothing there. And automatically I just do an auto unwrap so you can see how things are, right? So you need to understand how things are now and basically the edging, and create something that resembles what we need. So for example, if we're bringing this to Photoshop to paint, which before we've just kind of dumped stuff on there, we're going to add stuff in and things like that. So for example, I need to know exactly what this is, what all this stuff is. So here, if I select by UV shell, you'll see that this is the bottom slice here. You see that this is the UV shell, that's the bottom slice there. And you'll see that like here's top cover, here's just an edge piece, here's a looks like the spine, here is the bottom cover, here is so on and so forth, and even the pieces here. So every time you have a seam, that seam has potential to be shown. Now again, this is not an object we would spend a ton of time on because it's probably going to be on a bookshelf, but in all reality, this is an important object because we can take this and manipulate it so that it makes more sense and control things. So for example, let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to just zoom off into kind of a lot of space here. I'm not worried too much about it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edge mode here, and I'm going to pick this edge, and I'm going to shift right click, move and sew, right? That's going to create that back binding. Then I'm going to grab the next edge here. So grab that next edge and move and sew, and that's going to create the book cover. So now I have a book cover with the back cover here. And then I have all these pieces floating around. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to go into my edge mode, and I'm going to grab this and again move and sew. That's going to give me that edge piece. Same thing over here, move and sew. So far I'm doing good. Now I've got other pieces floating around. So what can I do with that? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these pieces here, and I'm going to basically cut those edges. So these edges are gone, and I'm just going to hit G for repeat last action, and G and G. So those are all cut now. So I'm going to open the arrange menu here, and I'm just going to pack, grab all this here. I'm going to just pack it real quick. And so you can see that I have the book covers and things like that, right? And so we also have the book covers here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab these, and I'm going to move in, sorry, not move and sew. I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to cut them in the smaller chunks like there. And then we're going to find that other piece here. All right, and so I've cut all those pieces up. Now what I'm going to do is I've got the edge mode here, and I'm going to grab this, shift right click, and move and so. And so that's the inside of the cover, and I'm going to do that here, and I'm going to do that here, and I'm just going to do that all the way around, right? So let's grab that, looks like that one right there, and then I'm going to grab all that around, and then I'm going to go through and do this too. So you can see here, we can actually just grab this, and you can see that's kind of weird. That doesn't fit right. So let's grab this piece here, here. And as soon as these start moving, you'll see a little bit of stretching. That's okay. So I'm going to grab some of these pieces here. And you can see that this is basically like, you can see the issues right there. So that's kind of weird. I'm going to grab that piece. And so that's my edge seam there. And I'm going to just grab some of these shells and get them out of the way so you can see. Let's grab a couple of these, move them out of the way here. All right. And then let's go to edge. And I'm going to grab those two, move and so. Move and so. And so there lies that full book cover. And then I'm going to go and grab this piece here, and I can move and sew that, and I can move and sew that. Oh, no, I don't want to move and sew that. Let's undo that. That's our paper. So if you look over here, that's the paper. We want to keep that separately. And the reason I want to keep it separately is it's a different texture, so I would keep it separate. And then, so here's a move and sew, one over here, one here, one here, and then this is probably the binding to the paper. Actually, like, so let's look at this here. Where's this shell? So you see two pieces here. So one piece is the inside of the binding. So that's still the same material. If I go to edge mode and I grab that edge, you can see it's these two pieces here. So let's move and sew those and grab those two and move and sew that. So that right there is pretty much my book cover. And then over here, I'm going to just grab these two and move and sew. And I'm going to grab here and move and sew. And so now I can grab all my UVs here and I can lay out, right? So I have the two pieces, and they're basically in islands that are recognizable. Now, if this was a character, it would be like we would put seams in it, because you can't do all this in one fell swoop. But because this is a simple book, we're basically two islands. It's good enough. We have the paper and we have the book cover, and it actually pretty solid, works pretty good. So I can also organize this a little bit more. You have to think about your textures. So I'm going to have the paint here, and the big thing about the paint, you can see that this stretches things out a little bit and goes all over the place. Is that the best way to do it? Probably not. So instead of connecting those together, let's go here and cut these. Shift right click, cut, and shift right click and cut. Now, when we look at this, when we grab all our UVs and we pack them like so, now it's a little bit different, right? Not the best thing in the world, but it's organized a little bit better. But there's still a lot of empty space here. So how can we organize this so that the empty space is utilized? Because if you think about this as a picture, all this empty space is wasted pixels. Like, it's not applying to the model. So instead, let's go with the UVs here. Grab these UVs and let's move them up over here same thing over here. Grab this. Grab all of this, and I'm going to just kind of center it, and I'm going to raise it a little bit, and then I'm going to scale it till it's about in the center. You don't want to go outside of this 1 by 1 box, because if you do, it basically repeats the texture. So if I have, like say this was pages over here, and this part was coming over here as the book cover, and it overlapped, it would basically repeat that texture. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these pieces here, and I'm going to rotate them 90 degrees. So I'm just going to change the arrange, and I'm going to go into the transform, and I'm just going to rotate 90 degrees. And so now these fit in here a lot better, and I have a lot less wasted space. In fact, I have so much more space here, and you can see like so. So if I have space, let's rotate this just a hair. So let's clean that up a little bit. This looks a little bit wonky, so let's grab that and kind of straighten that out. So now I've rotated these and I've scaled these up. Now I'm going to go here into the edge, or to the shell. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to move it right over here like so. So here is my pages, and here's more of my pages. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to scale this up like so, and move it in here and scale it down a little bit. So now this utilizes the majority of my space, and gives me a good UV to kind of work with. And I can grab a lot of these edges. So like I can grab all these edges here, and I can grab that and I can scale that straight. So now I can go in and I can clean this up. I can also go in here too, and you can see there's some overlapping stuff here. So like this here, I can go in and I can move and sew that together. I can grab these here and sew that together. That looks good. And let's do the same thing here. And then I can grab this and scale this down like this. But now what I've got is basically, if I can go into my UVs here, and I'm going to grab my UVs. So I'm going to just grab these here, and then I can scale those down like so. Clean up this, scale some of these, grab this here, move it here like so. Grab, and I can unify these a little bit more so that they're just a little bit more organized. Like I can go in and grab this here and scale them. And so grab this edge here. And notice when you grab an edge here, it's going to grab an edge there and kind of adjust. So you don't want to necessarily do that. You want to have your UVs, you want to work with your UVs, not your objects. So I'm going to grab these here, and here, and then I can scale that together and then move those slightly down. And so I can work that way and clean things up this way too. All right, so then when you're done with this, we can do a snapshot. So we can basically output this as a PNG or anything like that, and kind of work on our textures down the road here. So once you do that, so I can say, let's change this from chest PNG, let's change it to book. And basically this is our size, and we're going to hit apply and close, and now that'll export our textures out. Okay, and with that it will create a PNG, which is, we can barely see it, but here is a PNG of basically our process. And we can use this to texture. We can bring that into Photoshop and start working on it from there. All right, so you can barely see it here, but this is the PNG. I'm going to just bring in a new layer, and I'm going to just fill that layer with black and drop that underneath. And so now you can actually see this a little bit better. Now what I've got here is I've got some paper texture that I'm going to bring in. So I'm going to just bring in some textures real quick. So I'm going to hit Control V to, I've already copied, let's see here, let's copy image and paste it in there. So we've already brought that image in there. That's the one thing I'm going to do. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, all right, so I've grabbed the book cover here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this book cover here. Let's grab this book cover, and I'm just going to basically bring it over. And this is where Photoshop comes in handy. So I'm going to grab my paper here, and I'm going to zoom up in here. And so you can see where my paper basically kind of lies. So I'm going to grab this paper, and I'm going to start up here. And then I'm going to select transform, and I'm going to make sure my UV or my binding is off here, and I'm going to grab this and I'm bringing it like so. So that's the first piece, and then I'm going to grab this and I'm going to clone this over here. And that's my second piece, and then I'm going to grab this and I'm going to clone this over here. Now, I am stretching this, so this would probably not be the wisest thing to do, but it gives you at least a quick idea of like how to do things. So here's my book pages texture, and then I'm going to take my book here, and again, I just grabbed the book online right from Google, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select and transform that and fit it on my pages. Now, again, this is not the best thing to do because it's pixelated, but my goal is to, you'll see here that again, it's pixelated. We would probably hand paint this in, and I'm going to just trim this stuff off of it. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to select and invert, and I'm going to just hit the delete key, and there is that. So again, if this, this is something where basically that Photoshop knowledge, and there are other programs out there that do this, like you can use Substance Paints there in Instamat, things like this. So what I'm taking now is I'm taking this book and I'm basically lining it up, select transform, and I'm lining it up to match up the inside of the book. Now you see here, and this is where you take your other layer and go over it, you can see where like the book bindings line up. And if they don't line up, you have to adjust and move and kind of move things around. So these are all things that you can kind of see. So here is kind of the internal book covers, and then you can see that the inside, so this binding might be a little bit bigger, but for now this will work. Then what I can do is I can go create a new layer, and I can then take this and we can use the clone stamp, if I can find it here. Well, let's just use the clone stamp, and I'm just going to paint here. So instead of boring you with the process of this, I'm basically just using the clone stamp, and I'm just cloning out the book so that I meet and match the borders. Otherwise the borders will be empty and they'll be either black or whatever my color is. So I'm really quickly hand painting this. I'm actually using just a regular brush for the outside because I don't want to clone stamp the individual pieces here. It's just taking too long. So to give you a rough idea of like what the inside of the cover is going to look like, that's basically just a quick, fast paint job. And I can use the web as tools, so I can use image to normal map, and there's tons of them out there. So I'm just going to grab this one here. I'm going to grab this and I'm going to drag that on top there, and there comes now my book texture. Now you can see that I've got some different book textures. You can see that I've got and I can zoom up in this, and you can see what the book normals are going to look like. and you can see what the heights are going to look like and displacements and things like that. And I can control the strength. So because this is a book, I'm going to control the strength. I'm going to control the levels. So I don't need that too much. I can blur things a little bit or sharpen them like so. And then I can say, you know, I can look at it on different, like if I want just a plane, this is what it's going to look like. I can bring down and up my displacement. I really don't need a displacement map on a book, but we can uncheck that. I can add AO and specular, so that's what it's going to look like. And I can say download all. All right, so you see my model here is green, and the reason that is, it happens sometimes. It's just basically the material is kind of deleted or something's happened to the material. I'm going to just create a standard surface, and we're going to create our material now. I'm going to go up here, right click, and assign material. So make sure it's selected, right click, assign material, and you see it automatically fixes. So now my goal is to start putting these textures that we've created in. Now, thus far, I've been dropping the textures in. So I've been taking my book PSD and I drop my book PSD in here, and I move it over. And for the most part, you can grab that and attach it to your base color or something like that. Now, the problem is once I drop certain files in, you'll notice that things don't work very well. Like I can attach a base color and that works, but like it starts having problem where I can't adjust, like I can't adjust the specular, I can't adjust the metalness. And that's because of the way it's dropping in those files. Certain parts are kind of antiquated in Maya. So if I go here into, say, let's go into my specular weight. Here, I'm going to choose my file, and you'll notice that once my file is a little bit different. It still's got the place texture, and it's still got this, but for some reason it doesn't like when I just grab that. So I'm going to grab that file here. I saved it in my desktop. I go all the way down, and I'm going to go specular map here, and you'll notice that once I do that, that specular map is attached. Now, if you notice that you're not liking the way that specular looks, you can always swap it out for a different map or things like that. So for example, here I'm going to drag my AO map in here. So that creates an ambient occlusion, and what I can do is I've got my ambient occlusion, and then I can add something called a multiply layer, and multiply will, so I can add an AI multiply, and that will give me two pieces. So you can see here I grab my color from this and I'll multiply it with this, and then I will assign that material to my base color, and so you'll get a better kind of output on your base map. So I'm just going to grab these and kind of move them off. I can grab in, so you'll see that a displacement map is a little bit different. So like if I'm just going to bring these up. So a displacement map is very gray, whereas my specular maps are very high contrast. Now specular maps are great if you want certain areas shiny and certain areas flat, but if I want things flat, this file might be better off with instead a displacement map. So I change that and you'll notice my tint goes down. If I need to add a normal map here, I'm going to add it to the normal camera. So I'm going to go down here to the geometry, and you'll notice that there is no normal camera here. So you can see that something's missing, and that's because basically I need to attach a normal camera to there. So if I go in here and type in normal, there's different types of normal maps. So like here is normal map, and if I add that normal map, then I can attach that to the camera. Well, then I still need to create an input for this. So if you go in here in the normal camera, there's no real way to add that. So I can go here and I can add that as a file, and then I can go in here and go into my desktop and grab that normal map here, like so. And so then I can go into that normal section and control how much I add and subtract. So you can always add files through the square nodes here and kind of create exactly what you're looking for. So you can see this, and this is just an organization thing, but you can see here, let's grab this and move it up a little bit, grab these two and move it up. And so I can add all these maps and subtract all these maps however I want. So I can make the map as complex or as simple as I want depending on my scene. And so you can see here, if I go into the render mode, I've already got an AI sky dome in there, and it's got a little bit more depth to than the original map had. So, and these are ways to kind of create more complex materials, and would be in game engines and things like that. So I hope that helps. And if you have any questions, ask your instructor.